G'day guys, how are you going? Today we are going to be having a look at the STRV S1. This is of course the Tier 8 Swedish tank destroyer, premium tank destroyer I should say, from the Swedish line, as I've already just said. But anyway guys, today we are going to be going through the history of this tank. We're going to go through its top 3 and its bottom 3 quirks. We're going to go ahead and give it a brand score, and then finally I'm going to give you my final thoughts and tell you whether or not you should go ahead and pick up this very peculiar tank. And for more of my thoughts on this tank, please go over to heavilyarmored.com, and there you'll be able to check out exactly what I think about this tank. But anyway guys, let's get straight into the history of this tank. So the development of the STRV S1 was performed by Sven Berge, a Swedish gymnasium graduate in mechanical engineering. The first draft of the S1 was developed in 1956, and by 1961 the design of the new vehicle was finalized and a wooden prototype was built. Later, the S1 was indeed built, testing an all-new type of suspension which allowed for vertical aiming of the main cannon, because as you guys I'm sure can see, the gun is completely fixed and does not move at all. In fact, it aims using the suspension. The tank, along with the STRV S2, became the basis of the STRV 103 tanks at Tier 9 and Tier 10 in World of Tanks. So now on to the top 3 and the bottom 3 quirks of this tank. Number 1 in the top 3 quirks is that this tank has insane penetration with just its standard rounds. You never really ever need to fire premium rounds. Even if you're firing at a Type 5 heavy or a mouse at Tier 10, this thing has very good penetration, but we'll get onto that very shortly. It also has insane camouflage value, and when you combine this with good crew skills such as Camouflage and Brothers in Arms, you see I have all women as my tank crew, so that I guess it was Sisterhood or something, or maybe they changed it to Brothers. I don't remember, but anyway, this thing has insane camouflage. Also, it is very fast at reversing. It can almost go as fast reversing as it can go forward, which means that you can shift out of dangerous positions very quickly, which is something that you will need to do in this tank quite often. Now onto the bottom 3 quirks of this tank. So the first bottom 3 quirk of the tank is that it has very thin armor, 30mm all round. We'll get to the armor schematic viewer very shortly as well, but guys, this tank has very poor armor and can be overmatched by almost any Tier 8 tank plus that it can come across, except for the Tier 8 medium tank. So that is something you do need to keep in mind. Also, in order to properly use its pretty insane gun, you need to be in siege mode, and when you're in siege mode, it leaves you very vulnerable. Your mobility is cut dramatically, meaning that anything can circle you. It's something you do need to be warned about. This thing, although it has very good stats in siege mode, not in siege mode, yeah, it can't defend itself very well at all. And also, it has the second lowest hit points pool of any Tier 8 tank destroyer. So that is something you need to keep in mind as well. On to the brand score now. Now do keep in mind that these are siege mode values, and when you go into the normal mode, I suppose it's called the normal tank mode, right? Then the stats become worse in majority of areas for this tank, so keep that in mind. Anyway, the DPM of this tank is 2,294.12, giving it a 6 out of 10. Penetration wise, and as we were saying in the top 3 quirks, the penetration of this tank is 288mm, giving it an 8 out of 10, also meaning that you rarely ever have to fire premium rounds. Gun handling wise, the shown dispersion value of this tank is 0.29, giving it a 4 out of 5, while the hidden dispersion value average of this tank is 0.134, giving it a 4 out of 5. Aiming time wise, the aiming time of this tank is 1.34 seconds, giving it a 10 out of 10, a perfect score there. Gun vertical movement of this tank, well, the gun depression of this tank is 11 degrees, giving it a 4 out of 5, while the gun elevation of this tank is also 11 degrees, giving it a 2 out of 5. Survivability wise, well, let's have a look at the armor schematic viewer now, so I can give you my exact thoughts on the armor of this tank, which is, it's really interesting. So having a look here, you'll notice immediately that there is a lot of spaced armor on this tank. If we have a look here, this is all spaced armor. If we have a look on this side, this is all spaced armor, meaning if you fire a shell into these areas, your shell will just go missing. It will not penetrate the tank. Of course, if it's angled like this, you have a much better chance of being able to penetrate the tank. But if you just shoot it straight on, you shoot at these sides, beware, it will not penetrate or do any damage to the tank. Having said that, you'll see here that there is only 30 millimeters of frontal armor, and although it gives it a better effective thickness of 76 millimeters, this can be overmatched by anything 91 caliber or above, which is pretty much every tier 9, tier 10 tank, and most tier 8 tanks as well. Having said that, tier 6, tier 7 tanks are going to struggle big time to go through the front of this tank because it is so well sloped. It is sloped back at over 70 degrees, meaning that it is an auto ricochet for anything 90 millimeters of caliber and less. I mean, have a look at the angling on this, guys. It is absolutely insane. If you hit it at that kind of angle, and as I said, it doesn't overmatch, it's just going to bounce. You'll have no issues at all. So this thing can be very, very good at sneaking up over hills, especially with its 11 degrees of gun depression, because if you cover that lower area right here, then you're pretty much set, and you're going to leave the enemy very frustrated as well. Of course, it can take shells from tier 10, tier 9 if they go into the spaced armor, but this is very rare. Do not rely on it. You do get very weird bounces in this tank. So you can't, it's not like you can angle the tank. It's very much an instance of RNG for this tank, where the shell will go and whether it will penetrate or not. So as such, guys, I'm giving this tank a 5 out of 10 for its survivability. It's just so odd that yes, it can be okay, but most of the time it's not okay, but then most of the time I guess it is okay. It's very confusing, so I'm giving it a 5 out of 10 because I'm very much on the fence with the armor of this tank. Now, the mobility of this tank, well, the power to weight ratio of this tank is 16.36 horsepower to ton, giving it a 3 out of 5, while the average traverse speed of the tank is 21.223, giving it a 2 out of 5. View range wise, the view range of this tank is quite poor at 350 meters. However, it's not the worst, so it gets an 8 out of 10. Concealment while stationary, the camouflage value of this tank, well, the camouflage value of this tank is 24.08, giving it another perfect score of 10 out of 10. It's absolutely insane how sneaky this tank is. Often the enemy won't be able to see you, and you can just keep going shot after shot into them with a high penetration gun. That is the real, I guess, feature of this tank, is it's so sneaky, and it can just hide behind bushes, and the enemy won't be able to see you, and that makes this tank really, really great indeed, especially since it has no armor, so it really does rely on that camouflage. Now, the value of this tank, well, I think this tank is a very, very difficult tank to play, and I think you will agree with me. You need a very high skill cap to be able to play this tank. You need to know things about concealment. When are you concealed? Because you can go into a bush, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're concealed. You need to have a good crew on it, because if you don't have camouflage on your crew, then this tank kind of becomes quite useless. It's not that great when it doesn't have, like, I've got right now a 40%, over 40% camouflage on my tank because of the crew skills, because of the brothers in arms, because of the concealment, because of the vents I have on the tank as well. So it does require a very, very high skill cap. Of course, it has no armor, meaning if you get yourself into a bad situation, then it's going to be very, very hard to get out of it, because you're going to lose a lot of your health, especially considering you don't have very much health to begin with. So value-wise, this is a very hit or miss tank. If you're a very, very good player in World of Tanks, then this will be very, very valuable to you. But if you're not a good player, or you don't think you're very knowledgeable in the game, then I would definitely steer clear of this tank. It requires a very high level of skill to be able to master and be able to play well. Of course, anyone can play it, but it isn't easy to play. I struggle to play with it, and I like to think I have a pretty good understanding of World of Tanks, hence I like to make videos on it. So anyway, guys, value-wise, I'm giving this tank a 6 out of 10. So therefore, guys, the final brand score for this tank is a massive 72 out of 100. But please, please remember that this is because of siege mode stats, and you're not going to be in siege mode a lot of the time, especially when you're moving from place to place, or you're trying to run away from enemies. And when you're trying to run away, this thing just becomes a target. You can't aim it. it becomes almost impossible. So it's 72 out of 100, but that is only in siege mode, and you're not only going to be in siege mode because it's very impractical to just do that. But anyway, guys, let's jump straight into a game and see just how well this tank performs. So guys, today we have Call Me Judok playing in, of course, the STRV S1. He is playing on Malinovka. I personally hate Malinovka with a passion because, well, I just don't like the way it's laid out. I guess everyone's different. I just don't like this one, and that's my prerogative. But anyway, we can see he's in a top tier position here, something I don't really experience very often in this tank, to be honest, but it leaves him very well in a very good spot, because really he's going up against guns which a lot of them will just bounce automatically. We can see he's in siege mode and he's done 429 damage, which is absolutely insane, but he is doing, of course, very well so far. Only one shot. I can't really say that, can I? But two tanks on his team have been knocked out. It looked like he was kind of slow to the game, loaded in a little bit slower, possibly had some connection issues. Having said that, he seems fine now. You can see we found the KV-85. He misses. Now this is something as well about the gun, although on paper it looks absolutely incredible, and it is really incredible. You can see there's no aiming time or really anything like that. It does miss quite a few shots. Point again, it missed the shot against the huge Oh-Ho. To be fair, a lot of his tank was covered, but it's a pretty bad shot to miss, considering that is a nasty heavy tank with probably using the 150 centimeter gun. Could be wrong, but that of course is a derp gun, and you don't want a derp gun in your face at any tier. T71 DA has been spotted. He's getting awfully close. He hits him. He would have been spotted, but you can see he bounces a shot there. And those tanks firing him, the T71 DA and the Leo, have no chance of going through the front of his tank. It's just too well sloped, and they will bounce automatically. Having said that, if he gets hit by, for instance, that KV2's 152mm, it will overmatch without any hesitation and will do full damage to him. As long as it doesn't hit his spaced armor, which, as we saw in the armor schematic, it has quite a lot of spaced armor. That M6 looks like he will be just dodging the shell again from Judok. So very lucky M6 there. Having said that, looks like he's about to come around and have the fright of his life. Now the T-34-85 goes through the side of him, because the side is nowhere near as well sloped, of course, as the front of the tank, and that was pretty funny. The KV-85 and the M6 killed each other at the exact same time. Quite rare that ever happens, to be honest. But look at what's happening. His team is being surrounded, and this is really where the STRV performs at its worst. If it's at the back of a map where it can keep the front of its tank facing the enemy, at least it has a fighting chance. But at this point, when it's being surrounded, when it's being flanked, it doesn't really have that chance. Something to know as well about this, the shells, is that they are very high velocity. I can't remember exact velocity, but because they are APCR shells, they are very fast. He's been flanked by that T-71, which is not a good position to be in. Of course, he can't actually move his gun either while he's moving back and forward, even in siege mode, because he needs the tracks to move. He's being surrounded, and although he's done 2,000 damage, it doesn't look great. Having said that, the KV-85 on his team looks like he knows what he's doing and was able to take out that T-71. He takes a blind shot at that T-34-85 and hits him, of course, because why else wouldn't you hit a tank you can't see? The Leo does go behind the hill, so he can't quite hit him. It's not really a hill, I suppose. It's more of a, I don't even know how to describe it. Takes out the T-25 AT, and right now the scores are not so even. 7 of the enemy team are down, and 10 of his team are down. The full health KV2, which he does not want to get hit by. He just gets a lot of spotting damage as well on that Leo, probably from the artillery hitting him. But yeah, as I said, he does not want to get hit by that KV2. It will take him out, no issues at all. In fact, it only really needs to splash him to do a substantial amount of damage. Something to know as well, look how fast he's going backwards. 45 kilometers per hour backwards without any struggle, any hesitation. The tank is going back super fast. This is something to know as well. It's great for relocating, but it's also why I say you need a high skill cap playing this tank, because you need to know when to relocate. If he had stayed in that position right now, he would be getting flanked by that Leo and have a very hard time. But you can see he's taking full advantage of the camouflage of this tank, going behind a bush, and there's a lot of bushes between him, a lot of trees between him and the enemy. So he has a pretty good chance of not being spotted. So he's got to be careful as well, because on the never eat soggy wheat bix on the west flank, the tanks look like they were last spotted there, and of course they come around, and that T-34-85 is giving his artillery a very hard time. It's just taken out one of the artillery, and looks like another one of his tanks were taken out by artillery, but he is able to save the GW Tiger P, which is probably the more valuable artillery. But that has now drowned the, I hope it was unintentional by that GW Tiger P. I'm going to presume it was unintentional, given the benefit of the doubt. But now he's the surviving tank on his team. And this is where his tank is really, really going to shine. He does have binoculars on as well. This is something I would recommend, and something I'm going to do with my STRVs. I'm going to put binoculars and a camouflage net, because it does not matter if you move the tracks of this tank, they still stay. So you can see it down the bottom when they're highlighted green, that means that they're now active, and his things are active. And with the poor view range of the tank at 350 meters, is really, really going to help. Unfortunately, he bounces his premium shell off that KV-3, which is very, very unlucky. But look at that STRV, same as him, doesn't know where he is. In fact, nobody really knows where he is until... oh, not even yet. He hasn't been spotted, and look how close that tank is. Absolutely insane game so far. And now he's running away again. Again, the mobility of this tank. Look where it's coming into play. He's able to move, relocate, not be in the same position, because Artie might blind fire if he wasn't spotted. I'm not sure if he's got 6th sense of this tank. I don't quite remember if it's come up. But now he's in a much better position. If he was fighting against that STRV S1, he could have been one shot potentially by its gun, but of course that never eventuated. So you can see artillery are blind firing, and that can be very dangerous for him. Now that KV-2 will know about where he is, and he does not want to get blind fired by that KV-2. So he moves a little bit. Will he get the shot in? Gets the shot in, and that KV-2 has now stopped. Now, this is quite scary. The KV-2 is facing him. He knows about where he is, but he doesn't know where he is exactly, and he takes out that KV-2. Does not get spotted in the process. That is quite dangerous, though, to move a bush down, because now artillery might know his approximate location. But have a look at that. He's just taken out the enemy team, and the artillery did know his approximate location and took a blind shot. I'm sure he wasn't spotted at that point, because that KV-2 and the KV-3 both have very poor view range as well, and you can see the other blind fire there as well, which is absolutely fantastic. I'm going to speed it up now a little bit, because of course the artillery could be anywhere, and we don't want to sit around the whole game. Looks like he's going to go find the artillery. He does have 6 minutes left, so it shouldn't be too much of an issue finding the artillery at all, should it? Well, we say that. It's a big map, and there's a lot of places to hide. Looks like the GW Panther has just come out, hasn't spotted him, and he knocked him out there. Took a very, very good shot. Got the final shot in, though. Takes a shot at the M40, M43. He was spotted. He doesn't want to get hit. He will get overmatched very, very quickly. Doesn't die, but he did lose his track, and he takes him out. That was an absolutely incredible game, but let's have a look at the post-game stats to see just how well Call Me Judoka did in this game. So guys, as you can see, and as you can tell, he would have had a very, very good game, and indeed he did. He got a Mastery Badge, Ace Tanker, a Bruiser Medal, a Duelist Medal, a Fire for Effect Medal, and 3 Epic Medals. Let's go through them all here. He got the Pascucci's Medal for destroying 2 enemy SPGs in 1 battle. He got the Kolobanov's Medal for standing alone against 5 or more enemy tanks or SPGs, which of course he did and won. He got the Pulse Medal for destroying 10 or more tanks. He got 10, but that's still very, very, very good. He got a High Caliber Medal, a Tanker Sniper Medal, and of course a Top Gun, but who cares about a Top Gun when you get the Pulse Medal? Now, having a look at the team score, he did 7,093 damage. He did way more than the combined damage of the rest of his team. In fact, I think he did, well, he got very, very close to doing what the entire enemy team did as well. So very, very, very well done. And if we have a look at the stats, we'll see just how well he did. He fired 28 shots, of which 26 hit and 24 penetrated, 7,093 damage, of which almost 1,800 was from over 300 meters. Of course, this tank is a very, very good sniper, and it should be used as such. He got 2,038 base experience, which is absolutely absurd. Another thing about this tank is that it prints credits like crazy. It has an artificial credit booster to it, and that made him get 214,000 credits, even though he fired an insane amount of premium ammunition. So this tank is really, really good at printing credits as well. But then you got to look at the other flip side of it and be like, are you a good enough player to be able to utilize this tank to its full potential? Because you can play this tank like he did if you know how the game mechanics work, but if you don't know how the game mechanics work, then you will get flanked by, for instance, that T71 CD, and that will ruin your day, I promise you that. But look how well he did, so definitely can do very well in this tank. Anyway, let's go back to the garage. I'm going to give you my final thoughts on this tank and whether or not you guys should pick it up. So guys, what are my final thoughts on this tank? Well, as I said, it is a very difficult tank to play if you don't know what you're doing with it. So my final thoughts is it worth the gold? Yes, but depending on how good you think you are in World of Tanks. If you're not a very good player, I would steer clear of this. Go for something else. Go for something like the Tier 8 Chinese Tank Destroyer, Premium Tank Destroyer, the WZ121 GFT, I think it's called, right? Such a long name, right? That one would be better for you. It has good frontal armor. It has very good alpha damage. It's got great DPM. It's got good speed. In fact, it's probably a better tank overall than the STRV S1, even though it might score higher in the brand score. I'll do a review on that one as well too very, very soon, guys. But anyway, thank you so very, very much for watching. If you did enjoy this video, please do consider leaving it a thumbs up. Otherwise, subscribe, especially if you're new. I'd love to see you guys around. Comment down below, because I do read every single comment. Not that there usually are that many, to be fair. But anyway, guys, I'll catch you next time.